Good afternoon. Welcome to the NNJR Drivers Seminar for 2025. I'm Bill Gilbert, one of the NNJR Chief Instructors, and I'd like to welcome you. So we're going to talk about all kinds of high-performance driving this afternoon. To start, how many people here have tried a sim? How many people would like to have more access to it? Well, I'm going to introduce Michael Polisek, who's going to tell us about an opportunity that we have to get a lot more access. So, Michael, it's all yours.
All right. Hello, everyone. How's everyone doing?
Good.
All right. That's good to hear. So, as Bill said, I'm Michael Polisek. I'm a PCA member. I'm a pro sim racer, and I'm also a PCA sim racing national champion. The reason I'm here is to introduce you guys to an entirely new track event training program. I've developed this in partnership with Apex One Simulation Center in Westfield, New Jersey. And I'm very confident that this is going to make you all much faster, safer, and more consistent for all of your real-world track events. As for my background, I've been highly competitive in karting and sim racing ever since I was young. And I'm a bit unusual that almost all of my track experience has been done in race cars. I've done very little street car stuff other than autocrossing 996 at Pocono and other various autocrosses. My background is heavily based in the sim, but all of that training has carried over to real world racing, and I've been able to set competitive pro level lap times pretty much every single car and track I've driven, even though I've never driven those cars and tracks before in real life. And sim training also helps in training for the unexpected, such as very big variations in track temperature and also in wet conditions. The best example of this is when I raced the Sebring Champ Car event in December in a spec Boxster. And for the first day, we were expecting no rain at all, but instead we got ridiculous downpours pretty much all day long. So my first in that car was in the pouring rain, where you could just barely see anything, especially going into sunset. Anyway, there was a lot of carnage, but I was able to maintain a very good pace, faster than the vast majority of the field, and I was also very safe. I didn't go off a single time, and that was having never driven a spec Boxster before, and that was my first time at Sebring in real life. So I'm very confident, and I know firsthand that this training works. And nobody outside of Apex One is offering this program of targeted track event training on the scale of 22 motion rig simulation centers, so I'm very excited to share this with you. So with that as an intro, we're going to play a 3-minute video here to explain what this is all about.
This video provides an overview of Apex One Simulation Center in Westfield, New Jersey. Apex One offers a fun, relaxed environment for arrive and drive racing, as well as a serious training environment for all of your real-world track events. Not only is Apex One the only large-scale sim center in New Jersey, it is unique among sim centers in providing comprehensive training for real-world track events. Our training provides the same type of environment the pros use to help you become faster, safer, and far more consistent at your real-world track events. For less than the cost of a set of tires, you can train all winter for your track events next season. Our training environment includes professional 6-degree of freedom motion rigs, analytics, and one-on-one coaching. Training is tailored to your individual car at your individual tracks. Even the motion can be tailored, aggressive for an intense track experience, or disabled for those with motion concerns. A simple online form guides you to providing detailed information about your car, tracks, and individual goals. You can even upload your individual dyno runs. The top screen is an NJMP Lightning Lap in a 2018 Porsche 991.2 GT3 with PDK. The bottom is the model of that car in the sim. Sim training often trims seconds off of your lap times because it offers many advantages that aren't possible in real life, such as exploring the absolute limits of your car and your driving without ever risking injury or expensive car damage. Track seat time is always limited, but sim allows unlimited practice in advance of every event. Coaching isn't needed to get started. Apex One staff will help you get acclimated. Once your lap times plateau, coaching can raise your performance to the next level. Can coaching really make you faster? Absolutely. We provide an optimal lap demonstrating the fastest line around each circuit and analytics showing the exact deltas from optimal in steering, throttle, brake, speed, and track position at every point along the track. This allows all performance deficits to be identified and solved. This is best shown by example. Our analytics from a recent Watkins Glen coaching session identified a full 12-mile-an-hour speed deficit through the entire bus stop. Drilling down further revealed excessive wheel movement through the entire section as the cause. With the root cause understood, solving it required only a few laps of practice. We identify and solve every imperfection. Sim training is also hugely beneficial for new track acclimation. Imagine going to a new track knowing every corner and the fastest line before you even arrive. We can also host group practices or races using Apex One's 22 individual motion rigs. Most people can't afford or simply don't have room for a $20,000 sim at home. Apex One offers training on an $80,000 sim for as low as $40 an hour. In fact, we are currently offering unlimited sim use for $199 a month on an unreserved basis. Our program includes many elements that simply aren't possible at home, such as car customization, optimal laps, analytics, and professional coaching. In short, we offer a fun, relaxed environment for casual ride and drive racing, as well as a safe, enjoyable, and extremely cost-effective way to consistently trim several seconds off of your track times.
Alright, so everything you saw in that video is accessible on tracklevelup.com, and we intentionally made this website as simple as possible with direct access to everything. So you can go to tracklevelup.com now on your phones to view the website. We're going to do a very quick rundown of everything on the website. So first of all, we have the video that you just saw there. If you want to watch it, you can. Now, if we want to scroll down, these are the pricing plans. So if you want to sign up for a monthly plan, you can do so there. There's a button there to sign up. If you want to just rent the Sims hourly, there's the pricing there for the Ultimate GT Sims and the GT Pro Sims. They're slightly different. The Ultimate GT Sims are 6 degrees of freedom motion rigs with triple monitors. The GT Pro Sims, I think, are either 3 or 4 degree of freedom motion rigs. They're single monitor. So there's the pricing there if we want to scroll down. So this is the track event training form. So if you want to sign up for track event training and get your car customly modeled into the sim, you can do so here, and you can input pretty much everything about your car from make, model, horsepower, tires you run, any modifications you've made, such as aero, any onboard videos. The more information we have, the better. And I'll be able to work with you to make your car as accurate as possible. If you want to scroll down further, here you can sign up for coaching, and clicking that button there will open a form where you can state your goals for coaching and what you want to get better at as a driver. And finally, if you want to scroll down further, we also can host group track events as well. So if you have a bunch of drivers that want to do either a practice or a race, you can rent out the building. We have several different models available, and you can also request custom orders if you like. And then finally, the last thing to mention is this right here. And we're going to be updating this with videos of hot laps of the PCA NNJR track schedule, as well as we also have an autocross course that we created as well, and we'll show both those off. So I'm going to open up to questions now, and while we open up to questions, we're going to play a hot lap of Porsche GT4 time. All right. Any questions?
If you were in the market for a simulator, what determines how much motion that simulator can give you? Because they're all over the scale. This one moves 3.5 inches, this one moves 1.5 inches. You know, what's your feel?
Well, the good news is that the motion rigs at Apex One are completely customizable, so you can adjust how much motion you want. You can have like almost no motion whatsoever, or you can have the thing shake you around and act like you're in a real track car with very stiff suspension. So it's entirely up to you.
What sim do you use? Is it like iRacing or is it like your own?
So that depends on what you want to train for. If you just want to train for all your DE and track events, we normally use a set of courses simply because the customization you can do with the cars in that sim is basically unlimited. So you can adjust like the individual tire data, the aero model, the engine curves, literally everything. If you want to prepare for wet conditions, or if you're actually going to be doing any like club racing or real life racing, then we would normally use iRacing simply because the racing in that model is a lot better. Also, the wet model of iRacing is excellent and allows you to prepare very effectively for real world wet conditions.
So I've never done sim racing, and when my son was young and he used to trounce me in every manner of virtual driving, I used to say to him, well, virtual driving, not quite the same as analog driving. I'm not saying that now. What I'm wondering is, as somebody who's firmly rooted in the analog world as I am, how long does it typically take to get up to speed on sim racing so that you could at least approximate how you are in your car with how you are in a sim?
That varies from person to person.
Sure. But on average, would you say? I won't hold you to it.
So it requires a little bit of explanation as somebody going from sim driving primarily to real world. The feedback points are very different. So when I'm sim racing, I'm usually feeling a lot more through the wheel and a lot more visually of what the car is doing. Like, is it understeering, is it oversteering compared to my wheel and pedal inputs. Going from real world driving to sim driving is a little bit tougher, just simply because you're going to have to rely a lot more on different feedback points. You don't get as much seat of the pants feel.
Okay, all right.
So it takes some time and some acclimation. I can't really say for certain exactly how long. You're just going to have to stick with it and see if it works for you.
And just for anybody who asks, I'm going to underestimate the amount of time it took me to learn. So when I tell you, just know, it took me 2 hours.
Took me longer.
Huh?
It took me longer.
I'm sure it's going to take me longer.
Yeah, once you get it though, and you can start driving the car like you would in real life, it is extremely effective.
I have no doubt about that.
So what we're looking at now is an autocross run in the sim from a replica autocross course that was created for us of the August 25th Pocono autocross. And I can tell you, as a person who ran this course in real life, this is pretty dead on. So anybody else have any questions?
So are the sim rigs at this location, are they all triple monitors or do they have VR?
So there are 4 triple monitor rigs. I don't think we have any VR rigs. That was an experiment. I'm not sure if that carried through or not. But we have 4 triple monitor rigs and the rest are single monitor. Anyone else?
Do you also be a consultant if somebody wants to build one in the house or modify one area?
We do that actually. You'd have to talk with me for more information on that.
Your wheels, like, can you accommodate hand control?
Do we accommodate hand controls? I'm not sure. We would be able to look into that, but as of right now, we do not.
I mean, do you have like a wheel that's got paddles? Because really you just need gas and brakes if you're driving on that or like
We do have paddles on the wheels, yes. So for the 4 triple monitor rigs we have, we do have 8 shifters and we do have paddles. As for like hand throttle and brake, we do not have that.
there are wheels available, like, could I bring my own wheel?
I am not sure about that. I don't think so for right now. All the equipment's very bespoke. Any other questions?
Can I just ask you a question on iRacing? Are you plugged into the PCA setup on iRacing or are you completely distinct from?
So I have actually worked with the PCA. I was an instructor for a long time with the Porsche Club of America's EPE program. They're a really great organization. Currently, right now, I'm independent from them, but they are a very good program, and I highly recommend that anybody that gets into the track level up stuff and sim racing in general, they definitely check out the PCA stuff. They're a great group of people, and there's a huge amount of people there, so you're definitely going to find somebody to race against. So you've only got time for maybe one more. Any other questions? All right, if not, I'll hand the mic back over to Bill. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Michael. And Tom and I have been guinea pigs for Apex One, and it's taken me 4 or 5 sessions to get to a point where I feel like I'm driving the car. The car is very much accurate to my car, and Watkins Glen, which is the track I've been driving, is very much an accurate representation. So definitely worth checking out, and their unlimited pricing, if you want to get some seat time in, is hard to beat. So definitely check it out. Definitely, worth some seat time if you can manage it. So let's dive into the afternoon seminar. Again, on behalf of NNJR Chief Instructors and Track Chair, let me officially welcome you again. The Chief Instructors include Tom Calabro, who's our Track Chair right here, Craig Mahan, who's our Registrar, along with Dave Martin, Ken Ernsting, Di Kenson, Drew Karpinski, and Al Tafro is sitting up here, as well as Lester Chang, Tom Merlino, and we have 2 new chiefs this year, Rich Berry and Doug Holcomb. So you will see all of this during the season. A quick reminder that if you didn't sign in, you need to, and Tom, I think, has the sign-in sheet up here. So let's find out a little bit about who's here this afternoon. How many people here have never driven on track? So, okay, a couple people, okay? How many people at the other end of the spectrum have, did more than 4 events last year? Okay, good. How many people did 3 or 4 events last year? How about 1 or 2? Okay. All right, so we have, and let's figure out run groups. How many people here drove in green or yellow last year? Okay, a couple. How many in white? Blue, white. Okay. How many in black or red? Okay, so a real mix of experience in run groups and events attended. So that just tells us a little bit about who's here and who all drove in an autocross last year. Okay, so we have a few autocross drivers. Good. All right. So with that, we're going to dive in. Tom's going to give us a quick picture of the 2025 DE season, and then I'll do a quick recap of some things from last year that are relevant to the upcoming season. So with that, it's all yours, Tom.
Thanks, Bill, and welcome. Just going to go through this quickly. For the 2025 season, we've made a major change in how we run them. We've opened them all on February 1st. So, if you haven't signed up yet, get to it. In the past, if those of you who don't know, we used to sign up, open them up 2 months prior to each event. And we heard that some drivers like to set up their whole calendar for the whole year, right in January, February, get everything settled, and they're done. So that's what we're aiming for next year. Hopefully we'll open up January 1st. So our first event is at Lightning. It's a little earlier this year. And that's normally towards the 3rd or 4th week of April, but unfortunately Easter and Passover fell on those dates this year. So we're fortunate enough to get the early April dates. Actually, somebody canceled, that's the only reason we have that. The car control clinic. Who has not been to a car control clinic? You have to go. It's a wonderful event. You're going to learn how to really move the car around, how to really get on the brakes, go through slalom, do stopping exercise, go on a skid pad. You'll have an instructor with you. So if you can at all do it on the 27th of February, of April, please sign up. It opened up on Friday, this past Friday, so, and it's going to fill up fast. There's only so many slots we can do, and it will be at the Meadowlands. Mid-Ohio is, again, we have 3 days out there, and we're running that with, in conjunction with the Mid-Ohio region, PCA. If you haven't been there in a while, it's got a new surface, brand new surface from last year, as of last year. If you notice, we have some sponsors there on the side. Paul Miller Porsche, Jack Daniels Porsche. They're going to be sponsoring dinners or beer bus or something like that. Depends on the event, depends on the location. But they've really stepped up. Bill has been working with them, and Bill has secured all these sponsorships, which is terrific. Lime Rock, again, one of the oldest tracks in the area. And if you haven't driven it, it's a great old track. We'll be there for Monday, Tuesday in June. Pit Race is actually an Allegheny region event. We've been going with them for the last 4 years. It's their event, but they have invited us, and they're promoting a couple of our events. They're going to promote our Watkins Glen 1 event and VIR. And on our Thunderbolts, on our Mid-Ohio event, we're going to be, it's getting promoted by New York Metro PCA. Palmer also, New York Metro PCA. That's their event, and we are promoting theirs for that. And if you notice, Watkins Glen 1, then Lime Rock, the second Lime Rock on the calendar, that's a Metro event. That's a Saturday only. So if you can't get away on our Monday and Tuesday event, please sign up for the Lime Rock event on a Saturday. Matter of fact, if you get up early, you can get up there and get home all the same day. Don't incur any hotel charges. Watkins Glen 2 is still our solo event. That's a Monday, Tuesday, Lightning 2. Pardon? Nope. Lightning 2 is, we have a new sponsor, Porsche Edison. I guess they used to be Ray Cattina Porsche. And our VIR closeout of the season. If you haven't been to VIR, it's definitely a bucket list track. Yes?
Are the Lime Rocks muffled or
Muffled, yeah. They only do unmuffled on Tuesday afternoon. We tried it a few years ago, and it just didn't work out for us. I think we had 5 additional drivers just for that afternoon. It really was didn't pay for us to do that. But again, any event, unless you see it on a Tuesday, it's not an unmuffled event. Okay, but our Tuesday event is a muffled event. We're going to be doing track tour, which is basically during the lunchtime, is parade laps. So if you have anybody who'd like to come down, any family members, no helmets required. You do lead follow. We try to space about every 2 to 3 cars with following a seasoned driver's car, so that you could actually follow the line. You go for about 15, 20 minutes around, depending on the track. And so we'll try to do that Lightning 2 Thunderbolts. We've been doing it at VIR, that's not on there. If we could do it, if there are enough people, if I get enough emails, we'll do it more, if possible. Track experience, if you have anybody who'd like to drive on the track with an instructor in the green run group. This is an event where you do have to have a helmet, which if you don't have one, we could loan it to you. And we will do it hopefully at Thunderbolt, Lime Rock, and Watkins Glen 1. If you want to do it, please email me, because we only can have so many drivers available. We're only allowed, I think, last year was 3 drivers. I think this year we can do a couple more, but that's it for the entire weekend. You can only go 1 run per day. Okay, changes for 2025. Watkins Glen 2, if you've been there, it's a solo event. Again, it's only up a run group, but it was every half hour. We only had 2 run groups, so it was half hour on, half hour off, half hour on, half hour off. That got tiring, believe me. So what we've done is we've broken up into 3 run groups for this coming season. So but still a lot of track time. But you know, and if you twist our arms, you say, gee, I'd like to get a couple more runs in, we can make it happen. The tech form, there's a couple of different, of course you have to have your car teched before every event. Those of you who are new to this, you could either have it teched by a shop, or you can come to one of our free events, and they are listed on the calendar. But if you have a shop do it, we used to be able to have a business card attached. No longer. You have to have a receipt or a stamp by one of the shops that have the stamps. Not all of them do. As long as you have the receipt, that's fine. And there's a date on there. We used to have just a date for when you changed your brake fluid. Now we'd like to know what your seat belts are expired. And if you have the harnesses in your car, please check the seat belts. I checked mine about 3 weeks ago. I said, oops. And 1 set on the driver's side ran out this year, actually in December. So I had to scramble and get new ones. Also, check if you have a Hans device, there's a strap on there that has to be changed every 5 years. It's not a requirement, but it's definitely something that you want to do. And I just had mine done. I brought my helmet down to Stable Energies, and they recertified it along with changing the strap.
Hey, Tom, what about the seats themselves?
They do have dates, but PCA does not have a requirement for the dates for changing them out.
So seats, no, but harnesses, yes.
Harnesses for sure, yes. And helmets, yeah. By the way, your 2020 helmet is still good, 2015 helmet is still good for this year, because the new ones will not be out until maybe October. So, if you had, yes?
I've got seatbelts on older factory cars, stock cars.
You mean a 3-point?
Yeah.
You're fine. Kind of odd, isn't it? There is a difference, though, in the seatbelt. You know, in a harness, every time you get in the car, you're just really snugging those things down. You're constantly stretching them. In the 3-point, they don't get stretched unless you're in an accident. All right? They're always loose. So I think that's one of the reasons. Plus, it's very difficult to change, I would think. But yeah, no requirements for a 3-point. Only the 4, 5, and 6-point harnesses. I said that all these events are open on February 1st. Sign up early. What we're going to do is, before every event, we will have a drawing for the first 100 who signed up. And there will be 3 winners per event. First winner gets the event for free. Second one, 50% off, and next one, 25% off. It's good for that event only, and only NNJR events. So right now, the only one I think that's full is Watkins Glen 1. It's full. It's over 100, rather. I think on Monday we had 106, so it's probably higher than that now. But all the other events, there's still opportunity to get a free event, so sign up. Any questions? Yes?
The car control clinic on Motor Reg said instructors only, so how would you sign up for that?
There should be two different signups on Motorsport Ready.
Is there?
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to look.
I haven't either.
We only saw one, but we'll look again.
Yeah.
All right, and we'll check it out this afternoon. If that's the case, we'll fix that this afternoon, or certainly by Monday.
Sure.
All right, thank you. Bill?
Thanks, Tom. Let me just reference a couple things Tom mentioned. He mentioned Watkins Glen 2 is a solo event, but if you're a driver in yellow or blue who plans to do a few events before that event, you could easily be able to drive in that event solo. So don't just automatically assume you can't. We often have drivers who've just moved up from blue at that event. So it's a great event, tons and tons of track time. And then the other thing I just want to mention briefly, you saw the sponsors on the list, on the calendar. Paul Miller Porsche is adding several features to some of our events, and one of those is a skid pad at Lime Rock on the first day. Another one is going to be potentially some activities for non-drivers at Watkins Glen. And to help us with that, Jim, keep me honest, there should be a link in the next email from the club with a survey, a link to a survey. So look for that survey link and fill it out for us and help us do the planning for Watkins Glen. So a couple of quite a few new things actually for the season. So let me dive into just a couple of other updates. Starting with a look back at last year. Here's attendance trends last year, and when you look at the chart, it looks like it was up, but that's a function of Mid-Ohio being an instructed event. In fact, our attendance was pretty much flat, which is okay in some ways and not in others. So first of all, thank you for everyone who came out. And as a result, we're kind of holding our own, but we all know that tracks get more expensive, cars get more expensive, so we need to encourage new drivers wherever we can. So help us out, bring your neighbors and friends to the track, even if it's just to experience some of the things Tom mentioned as a way to learn what's going on and potentially get more interested. If you look at the attendance last year, we had some drivers who did all 8 of the NNJR events, 4 drivers, 7 who did 7, and so on. And so thank you for those who came out and supported us. We do appreciate it. Now, we all know we refer to NNJR DE as safe, serious fun, and I want to emphasize the safe part of that because that's the foundation, right? We wouldn't be having much fun if the sport weren't safe. And so we spend a lot of time as chief instructors focused on safety. And one thing that we've done for years is keep track of who went off the track and hit something. This is not something we would like to talk about, but it does happen. This is a serious sport that we participate in. And the good news is the long-term trend has been down in incidents, although last year was kind of flat. But at our instructor seminar a year ago, Joe Magnan, one of our senior instructors, suggested, well, why don't we look at the trends, in more detail. And so we took the data for the last 10 years and looked at the data by run group. And this just gives you numbers, but what is supposed to be showing up is that when we look at the 10-year data, 85% of these happen because of a driver error. They weren't mechanical or anything of that sort. And more than 85% happen to dry conditions. So basically, not, back to the guy or gal behind the wheel, right? So if we put that in percentages, it looks like this. And the percentages are highest in red and black, and fortunately lowest in student groups. An overall average of about just under 2%. But I got to thinking about how do we, that's a whole bunch of numbers. How do we think about that in a way that, I can remember it at least without having to memorize a whole table of numbers. And so what I did, I'm happy here. I guess that comes up later. All right, and I'm getting ahead of myself. All right, so we looked at this data, and the chiefs had a discussion last year about, well, what if you went off and didn't hit anything? Okay, is that as bad? Well, there's this quote that's been around for a long time that says a spin is just a crash where the driver was lucky and didn't hit anything, right? And so we got to asking ourselves, well, can we learn something about this? So we set about and to track every incident, every event where the chief was involved with a car that was 2 off, 4 off, spun, passed without a signal, missed a black flag. We captured all of that and more in a database as the season went on. And one of the reasons we did is we want to try to understand so that we can prevent incidents, because while the sport we do is pretty safe, it's not like the Sterling Moss era, but nonetheless, we don't want to see anybody hurt. So we collected statistics, and what we saw over the course of the season was 20% of drivers were in our database, for some infraction, off track, missed flag, whatever it is, okay? And I mean, that's a lot, but some of those are, okay, the driver dropped the wheel exiting the track. It's not that big a deal. But the majority were spins and 4 offs. These are major unforced errors, right? If you spin or you're 4 off, you didn't just drop the wheel. So I'll come back to that in just a minute. But one of the things we did, write down was what corner did that happen at? And so we know where at Lightning, to take the first example, where the most offs were. So where do you think the most offs would be at Lightning? Those of you that have been there.
Turn 7.
Turn 7, okay. Turn 1, okay. 3, all right. Any other guesses? So turn 7, definitely top of the list, okay. Turn 1, also up there, followed by turn 5. And turn 7, everybody overdrives it, right? Despite, if you read the turn by turn or watch the turn by turn video, guess what? It tells you about turn 7. Everybody overdrives it. And yet, more people went off at 7 than any place else. But these are data that we will be using to try to help everybody stay safer and stay on track. So how about Watkins Glen? Where would you imagine the most people are off at the Glen? 8. Turn 8, okay. What else?
Yeah, I think it is.
I'm sorry? The bus stop, okay. Anybody else? The boot? Well, turn 1 leads the pack at Watkins Glen. Fortunately, there's a lot of runoff room there. The bus stop was up there, as was turn 8. Not so much room at turn 8, but again, we know now where the most of these offs happen. And VIR, and I hit the button too fast. Anyone want to guess? Oak Tree. What else at VIR? Most of you had. How many people here have been to VIR? Just out of curiosity. Okay, quite a few. Okay, good. All right. Well, VIR, turn 1, and Oak Tree are both way up there. And again, turn 1, all of the advice we always say in the driver's meeting that's in all the instructions is, turn 1 is downhill, it's a very slow corner, you have to brake early and often, and obviously, you know, we aren't getting through, so anyway, these are examples of data that we now have, and not on the slide, but we actually, in our data, know, did somebody go off because they went off in the braking zone, or did they spin or go off in the middle of the corner, or track exit, corner exit. So we actually have more granular data, at least in many cases, which we intend to try to get smarter with. So this is all about ways to keep us safe, right? So here's the data, you know, organized again by run group and by event in this case. And you can see that it varies a lot by event, that we had the most offs at VIR, the fewest at Watkins Glen. Maybe all of those blue bushes out there keep some people on track, right? And a fair number of offs with students, which, you know, doesn't seem like the right answer, but and we talked about that with the instructors this morning. So again, a bunch of numbers, and this is where it got me thinking about how do I put all those numbers in some kind of context that, you know, I can remember at least without memorizing numbers. And so what we came up with is 1 in 7 drivers spun or 4 off at each event. Okay, 1 in 7 drivers made a major unforced error at each event. Now I have to say there were a few frequent flyers in that who were off more than once, and we know who you are. And you will be having a conversation with the chief instructor at one of your early events, because we do not want to see you in our database again. So 1 in 7 drivers spin or 4 off. 1 in 8 of those hit something. Okay, so I don't put this up to scare anybody or to turn anybody away, but to point out that we really are focused on safety. And we're diving into what's going on when something doesn't happen the way it should. And I will remind everyone, using this quote, that it's the driver's fault. Right? The Doc Bundy quote says, even if it's lightning that struck your car, it's your fault. You're the driver, right? And you already saw the statistics. The vast majority of these are driver error. So that's, you know, kind of the way the chiefs behind the scenes are doing some stuff to try to keep us all safe on track. So questions, comments on that? Okay, a couple of quick things. Beyond that, just reminders. Tom already told you about the car control clinic, and we'll get the registration open if it's not. It's supposed to be. And if you haven't been and you have limited driving experience, or even if you don't plan to come to the track, this event will improve your day-to-day street driving, as well as improve your ability on track or at autocross. So get signed up. It will sell out, as Tom said. If you're approved as an instructor, we need a lot of instructors for this event. So we need lots of instructing help, and we always appreciate if you can come early and help us set up, because there are a lot of cones to set up at this event. Autocross. Michael mentioned autocross earlier. That all of our autocross courses are on the Pocono East course. You see the schedule there. And if you want another view of what it looks like, let me turn the speaker on. Give me a second here. you definitely should. We have a premier venue at that East Course. It is a fantastic venue for motocross. So if you haven't done it, you definitely should. Yes.
How many runs do you do in the autocross?
6, 7, 8, some number like that, depends on the day. But I think the lowest number we've done in recent memory is 6. And usually they shoot for 7, sometimes 8, depending. As you saw, I mean, it's over a mile long, that track. And we have a lot of fun. So, in terms of DE, we're going to continue a bunch of things. I'm not going to spend any time here. Run group meetings, the classroom stuff that you're familiar with on YouTube will continue ahead of an event. There's a class for student drivers, a class for solo drivers. Wherever we can, we'll do classes at the track as well. We always appreciate feedback on that. And we have something new that I'll talk about in a second, coaching with data. Here's the list of classes. I'm not going to spend any time on that. The coaching with data is designed for solo drivers. And this is an experiment we're going to do this year. So who would be interested if we can figure out how to do that? Okay, bunch of hands, no surprise, right? So here's what we're thinking about, subject to what we figure out how to, who would be interested in helping coach, be an instructor? Okay, all right, couple people, good. So stay tuned on that part. We hope to have a kind of a template for coaches as well as maybe some train-the-trainer kinds of sessions. But in terms of how it would work, here's what we're thinking. First and foremost, everybody involved needs to approach it knowing it's a trial, and everybody's learning, right? But the idea would be at the track, we do kind of a one-on-one 20-plus minute session, and if you're the driver who wants your runs analyzed, you need to bring your video with data on it, with data overlaid on it, like you would have on a named SmartyCam or VBox or something like that, right? And you would select a session and anywhere from 1 to 3 laps that you want the coach to look at to give you feedback on. And the point being, the coach isn't going to spend any time on the technical part of generating the video. You have to bring the video with the data. And then the coach is going to look at it and react to, they're going to look at the video, they're going to slow it down, speed it up, look at it, and provide some recommendations. That's the idea. Yeah, pretty simple. And a variation after, we can do the same thing after an event, a little more time, email the video, and the coach could either provide direct feedback with an email or maybe even voiceover on the video if that made sense. So stay tuned, watch for more about this, but that's the basics of what we have in mind. All right, and just a quick reminder that the website and YouTube has all of our classroom material, all of the turn-by-turn and track maps and more. So if you aren't familiar with that, and I know many of you are, but if you're not, please take a look at all those resources. And if you're one of the people in the room who's never done a DE, if you scroll down on the DE page, toward the bottom, there's a new to DE button, and there's a host that everything pretty much that you want to know is there on the website. And if you're talking to somebody who's thinking about DE, you can point them to that section of the website. All right, with that, I want to thank everyone for coming today, as well as for all the driving and so on from last year. And I certainly hope to see many, if not all of you, at events this year. And I'm going to turn the microphone over to Tom, who will introduce Eric.
Thank you, Bill.
And for those who don't know, all the data that's on the website, all the instructional data and all the classroom stuff is all done by Bill. So Bill, thank you for all that information. So, our speaker today, he is involved with, has been involved with open wheel, prototype, stock car, and sports car racing. In 2023, him and his teammate were the first drivers in SRO history to be back-to-back champions in GT4, GT3, totaling 14 wins over 2 seasons. He's just started with Lonestar Racing out of Texas, the Weathertech series. Eric Filgueiras, please welcome Eric.
Good afternoon. How's everyone doing? Got some coffee, some snacks. My name is Eric Filgueiras. I am from Bogo Beach, Florida. I'm currently 31 years old. I've been racing since I was 5. That got me started into it. And the beauty of what I'm doing here today and who I'm doing it with is that I have spent quite a bit of time around the NNJR events. And this relationship for me started maybe 5 or 6 years ago because I was working at a private racetrack called Monticello Motor Club, and I had met Janice Ernsting in Sebring, and she recognized the Monticello logo that was on the pullover that I was wearing. And she started having a conversation with me about the track, and that some of the Monticello instructors were involved with NNJR. And then I started coaching her and husband, and then it just started to go from there. So I've done track events with NNJR, I've led track walks, and so the beauty of it is that there's quite a few of you in this room that I know. And so for me, it's speaking to a group of friends and who feel like family to me. So I really appreciate being here and looking forward to having this conversation, with you guys. And so to expand on that, I think what I don't like about situations like this is I wouldn't want this to be a monologue where I'm just sort of preaching to you. And at any point of some of the things that I'm going to cover, feel free to raise your hand and have ask any sort of questions that you may have, because this is about trying to pass on knowledge that I've acquired to you to help you out with your journey and your progress through this world of motorsports and track driving. So just thinking about some of the stuff that I've heard and what we covered this morning and how some of those things I'll go over again, but some of the other things that I want to speak specifically to this crowd about, I'm sort of thinking about how this starts and seeing the hands that are raised that you have been involved for a number of years, or maybe you did a couple of track days, or maybe you haven't done a track day yet, and this is going to be your introduction with NNJR, and you're looking forward to it. I often get the question, how do you get involved in racing? How do you start? And, when I started, and let's say 15, 20 years ago, I think the options of what you needed to do were pretty limited. You had to start, if you were younger, maybe go-karting, or start in autocross. And I think the beauty of what you saw earlier with Apex 1 is that there's a really great, useful, and now more technologically advanced resource in sim racing. And you see it, I'm sure there are a lot of people here that are familiar with the movie Gran Turismo. It's a real story, right? There was a competition where sim drivers were able to compete, and then eventually the winner got to go become a Nissan factory driver. And so there's so much greater resources available to the mass audience if you choose to use them. And so I use a sim personally. I coach with my sim. I log on from a remote standpoint, and I do sim sessions with some of the students that I have and that I work with. So there's a resource out there. Even if you don't want to purchase your own personal sim, I would highly recommend as part of your own learning journey, maybe to take them up on what they're offering by just going, if you haven't been to a particular track in a while, or if you've never been to a track before, if you quantify the money that you're going to spend to physically go somewhere and drive on track, if you had to go learn this track, how long do you think that it would take for you to get up to speed in the real world versus if you could go there, drive on the track, and hit the ground running? You'd actually save quite a bit of money, considering the entry fee, cost of fuel, tires, and that's used all the way up to the Formula One level and how they are able to expedite this process of finding advancements within cars, drivers. So thinking about how you start this journey and the resources that you're exposed to, there's a lot more opportunity than there used to be. And so that would be part of what I would suggest to do. For drivers who are learning and progressing, in my own journey, one of the things that I would do is I would spend a lot of time on YouTube. I would research places that I was going to go to, and I would watch races, or I would watch someone who has done a track day and just pick up on some of the things that they've done. Maybe I would see something that I would critique with the experience that I have and understand that maybe someone could have done something better. Or sometimes I'll see something and I'll kind of look at it and say, well, that was interesting. I can't believe that worked. So sometimes it's something like that. But try to use all of the resources to your disposal. There's nobody asking me to plug any of this stuff, so I'm just telling you what I think could be resourceful to you. There's another website called safeisfast.com, and that was developed by a group of professional and ex-professional racers where they interview current drivers on driving techniques, how they prepare, what they're doing on race weekends, what they're doing outside of race weekends. And so it's a really great resource that even somebody like myself will go to, and just pay attention to what others have to say and what they're talking about. So just things, what you're doing outside of the racetrack, how you're preparing, how you're getting yourself ready for a driving weekend leading up to those days, but also sort of a dead time of the year like this where the weather isn't the most advantageous to be on a racetrack, and how you're keeping yourself sharp. So with that being said, a couple things of what you're thinking about, how you're going into a weekend where you're going to be driving on track. This is a little bit of what I'd spoken to some of the members and instructors this morning about. One of the things, it's going to sound a little bit maybe different than what you're normally used to hearing as far as technique. I've been on track before, or somebody who's been racing for 15 years. And there's this, to me, this fundamental, very paramount foundation of what you need to do when you get to the racetrack and what you need to focus on. And it's probably not going to be something that you have heard. But it's the foundation that's going to give you a really good track day, track weekend, and allow you to build on the progress that you're seeking. And so, one is vision, right? You've heard this before, always looking where you want to be. Hands instinctively follow the eyes. Where are you looking when you're on the track? And that's not only applied to the very first session that you go out and you are driving, but it's throughout the day. There's these things that you're trying to strengthen within your track driving as the months go on, as the years go on. And so, where are you looking? And throughout that day, are you finding, are you aware that your eyes are sort of falling from these reference points that they're supposed to be at? Are you moving your eyes up quickly enough from one reference point to the next and being able to identify it? Somebody who, I don't do really any right seat coaching anymore, but I spent a lot of time doing it for a long time. It's very easy for me to understand immediately when somebody's eyes are too low. And the telltale signs, an example would be, after you've gotten to the apex of the corner, if your hands are still closed and you're still turning well after the apex, you're probably looking down here. You're probably not looking where the track out point is, or the next fixed reference point would be. So, being conscious of that and being honest with yourself of, are you applying that technique appropriately, to me is very important. The second thing is brake application, right? And what I mean by that is, the very first time that you get out on track, you were probably pretty surprised by how hard you needed to hit the brake pedal, right? because nobody would ever hit the brake pedal that hard when you're on the everyday regular roads, you know? You would never need to. And so when you're new at this, when you're first learning what this technique requires, then it's quite astonishing and it's unnatural. But then you start to understand track day driving brake application, how to release the brake pedal. But with that being said and how obvious that is, what a lot of people forget is that if you've gone months without driving on track, it may take you some time to get back to that sort of brake application, because your muscle memory goes back to default, which is what you know, which is what you've always been doing on the everyday regular roads. So remembering that, being conscious of it, how you need to apply the brake pedal, and when you get that part done, the hardest part is actually more of how you release the brake pedal. So understanding, working through, and trying to dissect and analyze how you're doing that is going to be really important as well. The last thing of these three, just fundamental things that I focus on, is car placement. Very simple. And again, from a fundamental approach, where are you placing the car on track? If a corner goes driver's right, we're going to set up on the left side of the road. Opposite to that, corner goes left, we're going to set up on the right side of the road. These are very fundamental things. And so, understanding how you're approaching the corner, how you're creating radius, the reason why we're apexing, we cut away unnecessary distance, and then we're opening up the radius from the apex to the track out point. These are all very fundamental things. Where are you looking? How are you applying the brake and releasing the brake? And where are you placing the car? And so, again, very simple fundamental things, but this is something that I can always revert back to, whether it's, again, someone who it's their first day on track, and this is just a simple repetitious reminder, or if it's somebody who's been doing it a really long time, but they've been doing it long enough where it's easy to overlook the fundamentals. So, remembering those things, and going back to this idea of what kind of intention are you setting for yourself? What kind of goals are you setting for yourself when you come to the track? And the very first time that you hit the track on a weekend, whether it's autocross or whether it's doing a track day, do it with intention. And if you have an instructor in the car with you, talk to them about the goals that you have. It could be anything. It could be that you want to have smoother upshifts or downshifts if you have a manual transmission car. You have a PDK, that should be hopefully pretty easy for you. So, drive with intention. If I'm working with somebody, again, it sounds kind of odd to say, but what I always try to tell someone the very first time they're going to hit a track on a track day is use your first session as this idea of warming up the way that you would warm up your body if you're going to go work out, if you're going to go on a run. You stretch, right? And so, when was the last time that you were on a track before this day? Has it been a little while? Remembering that you need to pick your eyes up, remembering that sometimes through these corners you need to physically move your head in the car. Are you getting back to your reference points? Do you remember where you were braking? Do you remember where you were turning in? Not just guided by cones. Because when you're new, we use cones as a reference to turn in, to apex, to track out. But once you've gotten past that idea of reference points, the best thing that you could do is use fixed reference points. Something that's never going to move. Even something like brake boards, depending on what track that you're at. If somebody drives off track, you could hit and move these brake boards. Or, I've actually seen this where if the maintenance crew has to mow the lawn, you might think, well, I always brake at the 300 at this corner. And now the 300 is where the 200 is. And you're going to go for a ride. I've seen that. So, if you can use fixed reference points for where you're placing the car on the track, where you're braking, where you're looking, that's going to make you a better, more importantly, more consistent driver when you're driving. Anything that you can use to help you take a measured approach is going to make you better, it's going to make you more aware. If you can measure it, you can change it. try not to do things only by feel. It's really important for you to feel the car. But if you can start with using reference points, it'll help you be more consistent when you go to a new track that you've never been to. It'll help you try to be more aware of the things around you. And then to expand on when you start to get comfortable and you're going faster, when you're chasing another car ahead of you, it's going to help you, this is also important, it's going to help you not simply just follow the car in front of you as you have this moving visual target that then becomes very easy to fall in the paradigm of that car in front of you. And I've seen this so many times before. What typically happens when you're following the car is that they hit the brake pedal and then you hit the brake pedal. But what you had forgotten in that moment is that if you brake at the 300, well, they hit the brake pedal at the 300, and now because you're following them, it caused you to hit the brake pedal at the 400. And so, again, the more reference points you use to drive around the track, the better it will help you to be able to realize things in situations like that. It's going to make you a better driver. It's going to make you more aware, right? So all of these different things that we're doing requires a lot of thought. Again, I would go back to the idea of what sort of intention are you setting? And if you, at any point, are lost or a little confused, ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions. That's what this community is about.
Every time you go out, you should have a goal, right? You should, even if it's just a turn one, take it a little deeper, or whatever it is. Even if it's just the one turn, or you say the one action of shifting, you should always have a goal when you go out. Otherwise, you're just using tires and brakes up.
Yeah, agreed. And again, the goal could be very ambitious. It doesn't always have to be. It could be very simple. And again, if you have an instructor in the car with you, work on those goals with your instructor. If you're going out and going solo, that's where, again, I would revert back to this idea of try to set some sort of intention, even if you don't know what that could be yet, because maybe you don't have enough time on a track or that track in particular. If you try to set some sort of intention, it'll help you at least understand something you may have not known before previously. So that is extremely helpful. Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen students, they say they want to improve their time. Well, how do you improve your time? One turn at a time, right?
Exactly.
If you keep working on those individual turns, the time will come.
Yeah. Are we good for, or do you want to?
Yeah, 5 minutes.
Okay.
All right, we're going to get going here. Please take your seats now. And before Eric comes up, I'd like to introduce Todd Drury. He's going to say a few words about a new venture that he's been in, and Todd.
Thank you. So I just thank you for your time. Thank you for the free publicity moment. So I'm an avid NNJR driver. I do drive a Corvette, but I do own a Porsche, so don't hold it against me. I started a magazine, a little publication called HPDE Magazine. And the reason I started this was I just felt like there was a hole in information for us, or for my hobby. I was sitting at the kitchen table one day getting it was like a local free magazine that came to my mailbox, and I'm thumbing through it, and once in a while there's a car section in that magazine. It might be a local cars and coffee or something, and I'm always thumbing through to see if there happens to be something in there for me, for my crazy hobby or my addiction. And I was like, God, what? There's nothing out there for me. I was irritated. It's sort of like when you go to the mall and there's no tool stores, there's no race shops at the mall. They hardly even have bookstores where you can get a car magazine anymore. So it just kind of clicked in my head, you know what, I'm going to make my own magazine. I know enough people who have this hobby. And it's just something that, like, when I talk about this hobby of mine, I, like all of you guys, I just light up. And I was like, there's so much to share in this hobby. And it's like, it's like a contagious little group. So it's a free magazine, there's no cost. And I just want to write down the URL, if you guys would be so kind. The website is hpdemag.com. Simple, hpdemag.com. And if you go on that website, if you're on your phone, in the upper right corner, there's 3 little bars. Go to subscription, and you can just subscribe right there. It's free. It's only quarterly right now. So right now it's in a prototype format. This is my first issue. And just to give you just a brief description, it's got a couple of sections every quarter. One section focuses on a track and the area around the track. So it might have a section about the Glen or Lime Rock. So each quarter we focus on one track, and we're gonna highlight. There's a section in the magazine called Track Widows. That's for your significant others who maybe aren't driving with you. Where could they go to grab a great meal? Where can you get a really good cup of coffee instead of, like, the crap we settle for because we don't know? Where's a good meal? Where's a good hotel? If you want a cheap hotel, you want a nice hotel. Where can you park your trailer? Those kind of things. Where can your wife go to the spa while you're burning tires? So there's a theme every quarter. There's a section on, there's a schedule, a driving schedule in the magazine. There's a section on gear. Like, one of the things that I find I love about this hobby is the guy next to you has this awesome air compressor that, you set the pressure and you walk away. Like, I didn't know DeWalt made that, so I had to buy one. It's like there's 100 gadgets like that. So there's a section on gear so you can learn what everybody's using. And then there's a classified section in the back. So, it's, a couple of bucks if you've got a race car or parts you're trying to unload. It's only for the guys who do this hobby. It's not going to anybody else. So the other thing that does is all the advertisers are strictly focused on our hobby. So you're not going to get stuff it's all like things related to what we do. So thank you for the 5 minutes. I appreciate it. Free magazine, hpdemag.com. And sign up. It's free. Can't hurt you. Thanks.
Has everyone signed up and gotten a ticket for the drawing this afternoon? If you do not have one, Britt, just raise your hand there. So please sign up, make sure you have your ticket. And I forgot to mention, anybody watch the Rolex 24? Eric was one of the drivers in that. Eric?
Thanks. I think I forgot to mention half of that stuff too. We've covered quite a bit, and we'll cover more. And I don't want to just keep rolling on from one topic to the next. I wanted to just give anybody an opportunity if you had any questions, literally anything at all, from what we covered already or anything that you have encountered in your own personal experiences, anything that you have had questions for. Tim.
Hey, Eric. Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
So, do you have any suggestions, techniques, resources for getting into the mindset? Like, because sometimes I've gone out there and I can just tell I'm not where I should be mentally. I'm not in the zone. I'm not anywhere near it. How do you kind of make that?
I think part of that, at least for me, or the idea behind it is just generally how you are capable of compartmentalizing things. Things may be happening in your life, personally and professionally, good or bad. And you wouldn't want those things to affect you too much when you're going on the track, whether it's getting you distracted or getting you too excited. I have seen people do meditation exercises, breathing exercises. You might even visualize. You may sit in the car before you're about to go out on track and just close your eyes and start to think about what you're about to do. And what I mean by that is literally start the lap, right? Think about as you're coming up to turn 1, and you're braking, and you're driving through the corner, and you're exiting, and you're going up to turn 2, and so on and so forth. And doing something like that may even calm yourself down, calm the mind down, and start to think about the task at hand. So there's several things that I have seen or I have done, and those would be some of them.
Hey, Eric, congratulations on your achievements.
Thank you.
It's pretty, very impressive. And along those lines, I have a two-part question. Clearly, you look like you're physically fit, and you get ready. You're talking about preparing and what have you. But in the mindset of setting aside the car and focusing on your person, the first one is there a skill or attribute that you spent a lot of time on developing that actually correlates to motorsports? And the second part of the question is there something that's a God-given talent that you just have that possess that you believe enabled you in part to get where you are?
I'd say the mental fortitude that I have was developed from my dad yelling at me when I was
Well, then a lot of us have that.
That's great.
Hold the flashlight correctly, please. I'd say, generally having that sort of mentality and idea of overcoming any sort of adversity, whether it's whatever you have to do while you're on the track or overcoming any sort of obstacles, big or small. I know that's sort of a generalization, mentality-wise. If you're passionate about this, then you're always going to sort of seek information, and I think that also helps not only in preparation, but again, also when you're at the track, if you're struggling with something, whether it's with your car or learning something about the track itself and something you're trying to do differently on the track, then just having that conversation with somebody that you know or somebody that you maybe observed how you appreciated what they may have done through a particular corner, or maybe they had some sort of experience that they gained throughout their time and along the way. And so just sort of seeking information. The talent part of it, I'd say there's, without a doubt, there are drivers who are extremely talented. I would not say that I am the best race car driver to ever exist. I don't take on that mentality personally. I just try to take on the mentality that I'm willing to outwork anyone else. And so I think that there is certainly a level of natural ability that differs person to person. But in my own experience, racing against others and also teaching others, there's always going to be a vast difference in natural ability between the young person who maybe they grew up skiing and then their family got them into a car and so they're younger and so they have better coordination, versus the guy that ran an IT company and never played any sports his whole life and now he's getting into racing at 60. So having the understanding that this is this person's capability, this might be their strengths, this part over here, this might be their weaknesses, and understanding how do we appropriately frame both of those things. I know you're good at this, I know we need to improve at this. And there's this idea of natural ability. To me, natural ability is kind of the combination between lack of self-preservation and how you feel what the car is doing. And so lack of self-preservation is probably going to diminish over time as you get older and you don't want to die. And so the other part of that is how you feel what the car is doing, which you can help yourself by going to a clinic, a car control clinic, like what NNJR puts on. Or I've seen a lot of people that go to rally schools. skid pad environments with professionals and things like that. So if you are more comfortable driving the car at the edge, then first of all, you'll increase your confidence with driving faster, but also you know where the edge is. And if you can do that in a controlled environment, then I think what you'll probably learn about yourself is that you likely had more natural ability. You just had to find the right resources to harness it. So, yeah, that's maybe a description that
Thank you.
you might have probably never had it framed up that way, but that's kind of how I would look at it.
Great.
Yes. What was the last part of that?
What was some of your biggest hurdles and how did you overcome it?
You want to repeat the question?
Yeah, thank you. So the question was, what were some of my biggest hurdles and how did I overcome that? I would say the unique part about motorsports compared to traditional stick and ball sports is that there's a huge financial commitment involved. Obviously, everybody who's in this room knows it is not cheap to put a car on a track. And so even just at a very low level to participate, to me that was probably the biggest hurdle. And so what I have always said is that I come from a very average family. My dad's a real estate appraiser, and my mom works now for Carnival Cruise Lines, and she checks people into the cruise ships. So they're very average people, but I was very lucky to have parents who were extremely passionate and very devoted to helping me with this dream, ever since from a young age. So I mentioned that I had been racing since I was 5 years old. It was not the same path that you hear of a Logan Sargent that just decided he was going to retire at 24. So for me, it was just trying to find the right resources, the right people who could help me with this journey, and trying to obtain the right finances to be able to continue. So I have slept on couches. I've traveled the world to try to pursue this dream. And I think going back to the question of this idea of sort of mental fortitude, I wanted this. I didn't want anything else. And so from a hurdle, I would say it was that. I always knew my own particular timeline would be longer than maybe the average person in motorsports coming up as a young driver, but I wanted it. And so what I also do at this age now is I look back and I appreciate the lessons that I've learned and the things that I've experienced and the people who have helped me, big or small, to get to where this is at. This kind of goes back to this sense of community. Like a lot of the people here that I know, and this is not my first time participating with NNJR, this goes back for me for years. So I take a sense of pride with that, knowing that what I have been able to do, especially in the last couple of years, to me, I look at it as I have taken all the people with me that have been there along the journey. So you could call that adversity or maybe hurdles, but I don't think I'd change what I've been able to do or how it's shaped up. Anyone else?
Eric?
Yes.
So, and this doesn't relate to PE necessarily, but having just competed in the 24-hour, which is a cool race from a Porsche point of view, of course. But what happens when you're on your third or fourth or fifth shift, and how do you keep yourself sharp through that environment?
So I did. That's a good question. So the question was, Rolex 24. What happens when you get to the third or fourth or fifth stint that they're asking you to do? I think by the end of it, I was probably more running on adrenaline. I did what I was told would happen and was probably unavoidable, which was I never slept. I was told by friends who have done the race many times already that that's just how it's going to go. It's a really bizarre feeling because all of the racing I've done before this, I was far more in control of my own destiny. I had 3 other co-drivers in the car. And out of the race, there's something like 23-ish scheduled pit stops. And then you have other things that you're doing. So every single one of those pit stops, there's opportunity to make up position, there's opportunity to make up time, but there's also quite a bit of opportunity to get it wrong and to lose time and to have a penalty go a lap down, something that you don't want to happen. So the idea of perfecting what we're doing and not necessarily focused on shaving tenths of a second off of a pit stop become far more important than trying to find little bits of time and risking a penalty. So by that stage, everybody's tired. The crew guys are tired. The guys that are on the pits, the timing stand, they're fatigued. So to get back to your question, it was really difficult to sleep, to get out of the car and try to shut off the adrenaline and go to sleep and then wake back up. But that's actually what's really required. You have to just let go of whatever you did, and somebody will come in and they'll wake you up, and it's your turn to get back in the car at 4 o'clock in the morning. So it was a really cool, unique experience, and I'm glad I got to do it. So, yeah. Regarding your driving and some of the techniques that you will learn, hopefully by attempting, doing, maybe even observing. Let's talk about when you're out on track and how you're going to interact with other cars out on track. When you're first starting to do this, to drive on track, and when you're developing your skills, hopefully you're doing it by what we talked about before, which is building on this foundation of the correct technique, and driving from reference point to reference point, moving your eyes appropriately, braking appropriately, and hopefully doing it consistently. In a perfect world, you could do that over and over and over again, but in reality, there's these obstacles on the track called other cars. So if you are someone who is you're new at this, so you're starting at the bottom, or if you've moved up to other groups and you're getting up to speed, the best thing you're going to do for yourself is make sure that you have your mirrors set appropriately, and sometimes that might be actually a little bit different than what you're doing on the regular roads. And so if you happen to be solo, what I would suggest is from the left, center, and right mirror, try to make all of these things connect to where you have a constant flow of information. If you have an instructor in the car with you, they're probably going to want to possess the passenger side mirror, and that's okay. Try to make it a habit, make it a routine of this checklist of what you're observing. And Al reminded me of this in a really great description. He's talking about what he instructs folks on track. And this was something that I even recall when I was back at Monticello and I was instructing there. I remember constantly staying on top of where I would want someone to be looking, what I want them to be thinking about, whether it's where they're going to brake, when they're approaching a brake zone, where they're going to turn in, how I want them to release the brake pedal. And it's this constant reminder of information. And it's going to help you if you're driving on track and you're constantly thinking about this checklist of what is next. And one of those things I think should always be to try to check your mirrors. Look in the mirrors, try to consistently remember what's happening around you. And what's going to happen is the more comfortable and more repetitious that becomes, you're going to find yourself becoming more aware of even what you're doing on the regular roads. When you're on the highway, you're going to find yourself checking your mirrors more often and being more observant and being more aware. It's only going to be to your benefit. Because one day, when you hope to move up to the highest group possible, if you don't happen to be the fastest car on track, it's going to be expected of you to be able to give point buys as quickly as you can and as seamless as possible. So it's better to start now with whatever level that you happen to be at to understand what's happening around you. And so that has to do with what's happening in the mirrors. Do I want you checking the mirrors in the middle of the corner? No, probably not. Wait until you've exited a corner or before you're about to get into a brake zone, which is really where the corner begins. But the more that you make that part of your routine, the more aware that you're going to be. Most of the information that you're going to receive that's going to be the most important part is going to be out in the front windshield. But every now and again, you're going to be able to see something behind you that is going to look odd or weird. Like, did I just exit the laces of the boot? And I'm about to go into the toe, and I look behind me, and there's a car that's off track. So what's going to happen next? You're probably going to get a full course black. Sometimes it's things like that, where you're just going to have as much information as possible. It's going to be to your benefit. The other part of the checklist that I would say is reminding yourself to constantly peek at flag stations. And going back to this idea of how you start your day and how this sort of warming up routine of what you're doing in the very first session, that should also be to look at flag stations. And I don't mean just look at them for the information of what flag is being given to me. It's when I last came here and I went through this corner, there was a corner worker that was manning that flag station. But that's not always a guaranteed thing. You might show up to an event the next time around and there may not be someone at that particular flag station. So just knowing that is going to help you become a little bit more successful throughout your weekend. In case of some sort of very rare emergency situation, right? This kind of goes back to how prepared you can be. And those things are also going to be important, again, as you get closer to the top level of your own driving ability and where you can be driving, what group you can be driving in. The more observant you are, the more information you have, the better and faster you will be at being successful with what you want to do. So there's no bit of information that you can have that is going to be too much, as long as it doesn't put you over your capacity with what you're able to do on track. Don't overload yourself, but again, if you can make it this routine of this checklist of what you're observing on track, it's just going to help you. So, like, you can get in trouble for passing into a corner if there's a yellow flag. Even if somebody's giving you a point bar. It's on you, it's not on them. So constantly being observant can also help you avoid drama and trouble. It's just part of what's going to help make you successful. So this checklist of things. When you're new and you are attempting to make a pass on somebody, it's a pretty exciting thing because you're beating them, you're faster. So that's fun. But what you're timid about and what's natural to be a little bit cautious about is the space between you and this other vehicle. And so I didn't coin this. I'm actually going to rip this off of Randy Post. But there's this idea of this quote-unquote vortex of danger. If anybody has listened to Randy, if you've ever heard this, Randy loves to talk about this idea of this sort of vortex of danger. So you have the track, and you have a car that's giving the 0.5. And so you've seen this on the road, and you understand this idea of a blind spot. I'm sorry, you can't see it recording. It's where is this blind spot, and where are you? Are you far enough away that this person is not going to be able to see you spread out? If you're 2 to 3 car widths away and you're approaching them, there reaches a point where this car can't see you and they no longer have any sort of information of where you are on track. And so what becomes dangerous is even if they have an instructor, maybe their instructor also can't see you. So they don't know if you have backed off and now they're going to feel like it's okay for them to turn into the corner and drive down to the apex. And you're saying, wait, hold on a second, but I'm still here. So you don't have to be 2 inches off the side of the car, but the more information that you can give them as well, the better this transaction is going to go for everybody. So putting yourself in the position of that car when you're making an attempt of a pass after they've given you a point by, when you're following it through, is just another thing that you could be thinking about. How is this transaction being completed? And is it not only appropriate, but it's as safe as it can be? So those are things that I've seen in the past as well, where drivers that I have worked with complain to me that somebody gave them a point by, but then they turn into the corner, and I have to look back at the video and say, well, how did you ever expect this guy to see you, or this person to see you? So when it comes to this interaction on track, this sort of exchange, these are also the things that, as you start to do these things more, you may want to think about how you're doing it, and could it be performed better? We're good?
What do you think of track walk versus looking at videos? Which do you think is more important?
That's a really good question. So track walk versus video. Both are important. I wouldn't dismiss either one of them. What I would say is video can help you when you're approaching a weekend driving on track to help prepare. If it's a track that you've never been to before, what I would say is it's extremely difficult to try to understand especially if you're going to a track like my home track is Sebring. If you haven't been to Sebring, I highly suggest it. It's a great track. Sebring has 17 corners. And so if you're only simply watching it on video, it's really difficult to try to, even if you watch it over and over and over again, it's difficult to try to understand how you could possibly be completely prepared without ever having driven it. So it helps, I would say, after you've already driven, you have a frame of reference for things. You could say the exact same thing for a track walk, but now let's go on the opposite end. You've been driving on this track for years. You might watch video from a few years ago, but you may show up like I'm sure some of you did last year to Watkins Glen, and you may have driven on track the first time, or maybe you did a track walk. And certainly in this case, it helped where you got to the bus stop and you said, what is this? What do I do now? So video may not always prepare you because it may be outdated. There's pros and cons to it. Walking on a track is going to be really beneficial because I've been driving Watkins Glen for years. I didn't do a track walk there, a true walk all the way around the track until a couple of years ago. And I realized that from the top of the S's to the bus stop, it's uphill. And is it uphill or down?
No, that's okay.
Is it? Yeah, I was correct. Okay, thank you. That's not something that I would have ever remembered or I would have ever thought of until I actually walked it. And so that's a small detail, but you might stand at a corner and look at the ground and say, oh, this actually has quite a bit more grip than I would have thought. Oh, this line has more or less grip than I thought. Oh, there's a little bit more room here. Oh, after this track falls off and it goes to grass, the cliff of that is actually quite large. And so I want to pay a little bit more attention when I get closer to the edge of the road. There just may be things that you may have not thought of that you could find out in observation, and it just gives you a little bit more information. So I would suggest to do both, but I would also say that both have their own unique limitations.
Hey, I did a track walk at Watkins Glen after I had driven there quite a few years, and after the first track walk, I changed my entrance to turn one. I didn't realize how steep it was.
Right.
And how much banking there was at turn one.
And you don't feel it when you're in the car.
No.
So taking on what Tom said, right, how about we add sim driving to that scenario, right? Because, iRacing, every track that I want to go on, it's in iRacing.
Yes.
Yeah, so how much additional immersion do I get with that in terms of prepping for my track day?
So I'm glad you asked that because you just reminded me of something that I wanted to say about simming and why I use it and how I use it at this point. So going back to the very start of my speaking, I think that a sim is extremely useful if you have if you've never been to a track before. Because what I think it saves you time when you first get to the track. If you have to spend X amount of sessions just learning a track and driving around and getting up to some kind of speed, then try to quantify that in the dollar amount that it took for you to get to that point versus what it would have taken for you if you just spent a couple hours on a sim. And now you know that turn one goes left or right. You have some sort of references of where you think you should be braking, at least a starting point for braking. Here is where I would say there's a slight limitation, and just sort of take it with a grain of salt when it comes to simming. It's not perfect. I use iRacing as an example for pretty much everything that I do. So there's other programs, but iRacing is constantly updating different things about their vehicle dynamics, tire models. One of my most frustrating things about iRacing currently is that if you drive on iRacing at Sebring Turn 1 in iRacing hasn't existed that way since 2011. So they haven't rescanned Sebring. They've updated a couple things that they can do without having to go back and physically scanning it. But the way that Sebring Turn 1 sweeps out to the right, they changed that back in 2012. And so that's not a representation truly of what that corner is like right now. So does it still go to the left? Does it still have a bridge? Does it still have the apex point, the wall on the inside? It has all of that stuff. So I actually had somebody ask me the other day, funny enough, at Sebring, they were frustrated because they said, well, I drove this car on the sim and I'm 2 seconds off of it in real life, and that never happens. And I said, well, just understand that one is this and one is. So is it a perfect, true representation? No. But I would never anticipate that it has to be one-to-one. Sim technology has come a long way, and it's very useful, and it's a really great resource. I think for learning a track, for jogging your memory, it's fantastic. What I personally use my own sim for at this point, if it's not for doing one-on-one coaching with somebody, is, and this is, I don't think this is talked about enough, but this is a really good way that I prefer to use my sim. If your sessions on track are anywhere from 25, 30, or maybe they're longer, maybe they're 40 minutes, if you have to, you're forced to concentrate that long when you're on track, there's probably not a lot of things in life that you currently have to do where it is 100% concentration and there's literally zero distractions. You don't get to drive on track at any point and say, oh, my wife called me that doesn't exist, right? Your concentration is occupied 100% of the time that you are driving during that session. So there's not a lot of activities that we do otherwise that require that. And now multiply that by X amount of sessions. If it's a normal weekend, maybe you have 3 or 4 sessions that you're on track. If it's an advanced, or if it's some sort of special weekend that you're driving on where there's a lot more time spent on track, then you are mentally fatigued quite a bit more than you normally would in a lot of other activities. So what I like to use a sim for is to train myself specifically for that, for concentration. There was a question that was asked earlier about simming and how long would it take me to get up to speed on a sim and sort of make it feel more familiar as real life does. So someone asked me that this morning, and my answer to that is it takes as long, it takes a lot less long the more serious you take it. If you also simulate respect when you first get into it, and you treat it like real life, and you build up to the limit, it takes you a lot less long than you may think. But if you go into it and you say, well, as a sim, and if I crash, I can just hit the reset button. What happens with a lot of people that I've found out is that they just crash a bunch of times and they just hit reset. But you never do that in real life. And so the sim is not a one-to-one representation of how your steering wheel feels, of how your brake pedal, how your throttle feels, the sensory input, the sensations that you have. But if you say, okay, I have to be a little bit sort of malleable with how I approach this and what I'm using it for and how I'm using it. But if I decide to take on the appropriate mentality to build up to what this is currently requiring me of, then I actually think it's going to sharpen your skill set as a driver, because the variables are ever changing when you're in a car, right? From morning to afternoon, you don't have the same grip level because the air temperature is changing, the track temperature is changing. That's not a constant. Maybe it's a little bit more constant in a sim, depending on how you have things set up, but what I'm talking about is having to jump into something and be a little bit open with what you need to do to be successful with that. So, regarding sim training, I would say those are the really positive ways that you can use it, while also understanding that sim technology has come a long way, and it will still continue to do this. But if you have the appropriate strategies of how to use this tool, then you can always use it to your benefit. Yes.
So this is almost a cross question. But one thing that occurred to me as you were talking, it might be helpful if it simulates it well enough to learn how to drive the wet line, which is something that you may not get to do often enough in real life, but you could presumably do it as often as you want on a sim.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And by the way, at least again, my reference of using is iRacing.
Sure.
That's only been available more recently. So, but now we do. I mean, maybe there's other programs that have had it longer. And so you're going to have to forgive my ignorance on this when it comes to the sim stuff. Again, I really mostly only use that. But you're absolutely right, because now you can do that. And it's not such a daunting task when you're at a track day and it rains and you say to yourself, I've lost all this time, I spent all this money, and now I'm here. But again, it's kind of the same thing. I would also suggest that if you are driving in the wet on a sim, take it with a respectful approach and build up to it the exact same way that you would in your real car in real life. And just try to pretend like there's not a reset button that's so easily available for you to press. And I think what you'll find is it actually helps with how you get up to speed when you hit the track in real life. Yes?
I just wanted to throw out the one thing that I found for me the most valuable about driving the sim was learning how to manage situations. Like, you get into a place where you don't really want to be, the car's not where you intended it, you're going too fast. It gives you the chance of trying to drive different lines through corners, trying different things, trying different ways to recover that you kind of don't really want to do in your real car.
Yeah. Yeah. I would agree to that. So it's helpful for those things. It's a lot of fun, by the way, when you jump on one and you can race against other people. And it teaches you a lot about some of the things we've covered, like awareness, driving against other cars. You can do some of these things online, and it really does sharpen your skill set when you're approaching the track in real life. And so, I found it to be helpful. Yes.
Yeah, we live in a world of AI. What's your thoughts these days with exposure or your thoughts as to AI getting into the act of coaching?
That's a really good question. So I thought at some point this would be asked. So I don't know if maybe you're discussing or you're asking more specifically about the Garmin Catalyst. That would be an example of something that I would use. So I think I'm going to talk to that specifically because I think that's what comes to mind for me. I wasn't exposed to the Catalyst until recently. I was coaching with somebody at Sebring, And this was someone who, he has a GT4 RS Club Sport now. And before that, he had a GT4 street car that he used Hoosiers on, half cage, nice car. And when I first met him, when I first started working with him, he had a Garmin Catalyst. And so I got to experience this, and I thought it was a really cool device. I was impressed with what it was capable of doing and how it was capable of shaping up a run, giving me lap times, and giving me sector times, feedback on those sector times, and putting together a perfect lap. And there's other devices that can do this. Obviously, if you use the AIM system, a SmartyCam, V-Box, Low-Tech, I mean, you can shape this up. I think going back to what I said before, if you're still in the process of learning, whether it's in general, learning a track, there is absolutely a time that can be too early to try to use a device like that. And I know that it's very appealing, and it's very enticing to try to get something like that with the thought that it's going to expedite your learning process, but it can also be very distracting. It can also be a false sense, or can give you false information with the context of that, with my explanation of it being, we talked about track conditions and how track conditions change. And again, I'll use Sebring as an example because Sebring's on a track. If you've been to Sebring, hopefully you like it. If you haven't, I would recommend going there. Sebring specifically, it changes by about 1.5 to 2 seconds of lap time from the morning to afternoon. So I think what a device like that can get you in trouble with is if you have a pretty decent run in the morning and you put a lap together and it tells you that you can brake later, roll more speed into a corner, and you try to do that in the afternoon where your tires are a little bit more degraded in performance, the air temperature is up, the track temperature is up, and you've now attempted what this device is telling you to do that's isolated in this perfect world, and you go and you spin off the track, it may leave you slightly confused. So I'm not condemning it, I'm just saying understand that it's not perfect. And when it comes to AI, first I think most people, myself included, probably don't understand completely what AI is and does in the entire depth of it. I think we use it in a general sort of broad sense. That could be considered AI because it's something that's sort of evolving, teaching someone as it receives information. It's very likely going to continue to make our lives easier or better when we're at the track because I think, again, if you have something you can put data into that receives information and can categorize that information and give you an expedited version of what you need to know to be better next, I think that's very important. But I've also seen from a human aspect with coaching, and this now goes back into data, if I did a lap and you did a lap, and we looked at the differences, I could tell you that in the S's at CODA, you're not going fast enough. I could tell you that from looking at data and looking at a data trace. What I may not know is that your line is very off, and if I asked you to go faster than you did, then you might find yourself spinning. So what I would say is make sure that you have the entire picture of all the information possible to give yourself an opportunity to be more successful. Maybe just not one thing. Try to, if you're, I have to say this carefully. If you're looking to progress, don't only use one particular thing that you always stick by, because what I would say is, in my own experience, there may have been things that I've done that I thought I used as the rule of thumb, that someone came along and showed me a new piece of information, something that maybe proved something different, and it gave me an opportunity to look at what I was doing in a different perspective. So something is always true until someone comes along and disproves it, and then there's a new rule of thumb. I guess that's a roundabout way of answering the question. I don't know if that was completely direct. Yes.
So, following up on that last question, which F1 team is going to use AI, and which driver is going to shut off AI first?
Maybe they're already using it.
They are.
You know?
Yeah, it's called telemetry.
Yeah. Well, even when it comes to AI, I think I have to imagine that at that level of motorsports, they're probably already using it, but maybe in the form of how they collect data and what that data then tells them and how quickly it gives them a direction to go in. Maybe more so than before, because maybe the data that they're collecting has always or has been the same type of data as it was or has been for a long time, but maybe previously where a human had to analyze this, categorize it, figure out a direction to go in, and maybe even try a couple of different things. There's very likely technology that already exists that may not be at our level of access yet, where it already receives that, categorizes it, and gives them the direction because it has calculated all the different possibilities and has already come up with the most successful figure. I got to imagine that that's kind of the case. And so, yeah. What I love about motorsports, particularly at that level, is that it pushes boundaries, and we often become the recipients of what is used and successful, and we get to use it in our lives on track and off track.
So, do you think that V-Box, next iterations of V-Box will incorporate AI and actually take that data and tell you, hey, you need to change your shot settings, this, your rebound, and depression, and just do that for you based on what works for you?
I don't know. I don't work for V-Box, so I don't want to speculate what may or may not happen. I think I would bet that we're going to go in a direction of that, but it's hard for me to answer that question. I can't tell the future. Yes.
More of a response to that. So I was sitting here earlier. I asked ChatGPT if I could upload a file of a lap, and whether I could take a V-Box file and give it to it and give me text based on pro drivers. So it's beautiful.
ChatGPT. There you go. I think.
One more.
Yes.
I just sort of have one comment I just want to share with the group. And first, thank you for outstanding presentation. You know, we're all trying to improve our driving and find that last second out on the track. I'm reminded of and want to share with you a quote from Kobe Bryant when he was asked what was his secret to outstanding performance. And he said, very simple, thank you. I'm reminded of and want to share with you a quote from Kobe Bryant when he was asked what was his secret to his outstanding performance. And his answer was simple. He says, never forget and never get bored with the basics. And that is something that I think totally applies to what we do. We're all here learning the nuances and getting some, great advice and about how to, be better drivers and be faster. But when it comes down to it, and when you get out there, I tell you, don't forget and don't get bored with the basics of high performance driving. Because, you've learned a lot, don't forget it and use it when you're out there.
There was one more thing that I wanted to just show you and talk to you about. A couple years ago, I think I found this photo on Facebook, and I actually think that it was Porsche Club of America that posted it. I'm pretty sure. And I looked for it again. It's a more pixelized photo that I sent to Bill kind of last minute. But I was just scrolling through, and I saw this photo posted, and I just thought it was brilliant. And hopefully you all recognize what track this is and what area of the track. If not, just so you understand, these are the S's at VIR. And so you may have heard someone at some point say that you got to drive through the S's straight. You can see the humor, pretty obviously. There's a lot of really great racetracks in this country and outside of this country that have S's in them. And they're all different. And what makes them different is that you may go to Watkins Glen, you may go to VIR, you may go to Coda, you may go to NOLA, you may go to Sonoma. There's other racetracks that have S's. But that some of these tracks, the speed is constantly increasing. If you've been to VIR and you've driven through this section, you know that your speed is only building as you go up, literally through the uphill S's, right? And if you've been to Road Atlanta, your speed is increasing, and then it kind of plateaus, you get to the bottom. If you go to Coda, your speed is decreasing as you get through the S's. Same thing with NOLA, same thing with Sonoma. So it's different because your speed may be building, and you're only accelerating, or you may have to have a lift, or you may go to a track that has S's where you may have to lift, you may have to brake. But to me, a simple trick that I think that I've learned about something like this is the back and forth car placement that's necessary. It kind of goes back to what we laughed about. That's not straight, and there is no straight line through it. But you saw a video of, virtually and a real video of autocross. And if you've done an autocross, and you've driven through an autocross slalom, or if you haven't driven through an autocross, I would suggest it. If you've driven through an autocross slalom, you would know that it's a straight line of cones that you have to go back and forth through. And what I have found the most successful way of doing that, the best way of doing it, is by late apexing. You want to be on the backside of each one of the cones. Because if you early apex, cones, if you early apex, then you're going to find yourself running out of room faster and faster and faster. This is why I don't draw. I'm terrible at it. But if you are making sure that you're getting on the backside of each one of the cones in the slalom, then you're going to set yourself up for success for the next part of it. And eventually it's going to spit you out into a straightaway. And each one of these tracks we've talked about with S's, they're all different, they're shaped differently, but the concept remains that if you continue the late apex and you get on the backside of each one of the curbs or the apex points, then you're setting yourself up for success through the entire section. And what you find is that it requires you to be a little bit more sort of reserved and disciplined, and it may feel slow, but it's actually faster. The last part to that I would say is car placement always has to come first. If the car placement is incorrect and you try to go faster, especially through this area, and again, if anyone here has been through that, you know what it feels like. It's a really high commitment section. And it narrows, right? It's a very narrow part of the track. If you are fully committed and your car placement is wrong at any point, certainly with the types of vehicles that you're driving today versus 20 years ago, if you go to your dealership and you purchase a GT4 RS, that car's got 500 horsepower. And I can guarantee you, if you get through the lower S's and you're flat out all the way to the entry of those S's, you're probably doing somewhere around 140 miles per hour, and you are committed. So this whole theme of vision, brake application release, and car placement, focus on the techniques. If you get that correctly, the speed comes naturally, and you'll find yourself performing better if you're focused on the right things. If you focus on speed first, you may, even if you don't find yourself in a dangerous situation, what you might find yourself is being consumed with frustration. So allow yourself to have the right process, the right steps involved with how you manage your day on track, how you manage your session, how you manage your weekend,